I'm Joel Marshall, and I'm the host of Lunch Therapy, which you happen to be watching right now. Behind me, I have these movie posters of these huge blockbuster movies, and today I have a guest who was a huge part in making all of these movies. He's one of the most experienced first ADs in the business. For those of you who may not know what a first AD is, it's the person responsible for making sure the whole movie happens. Starts very early on in the project and is there the whole way, making sure all the departments are communicating properly and everything's getting done. You'll learn much more about this from the expert, Dave Vengus, who's on the show today. And as you will see from talking with Dave, he has a very complex and exciting job. So let's get into this. This is the 275th episode of Lunch Therapy. Is that right? Is that right? I don't know, but let's get in and see what happens. I'm gonna get myself a modem. 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 All right. Loretta says she needs some therapy today, and I've got some for you, some inspirational therapy, but also some turtle therapy, some sea turtle therapy. Yay, congrats, yes. Congrats to everyone for making this show just a good sanctuary for all of us. Gniel, hi, babe. Hi. Good to see you, Chuck. Kamala says hi as well. Yeah, so we've got a great guest today, and I want to get on with the big shoe. But first, of course, we have to breathe. Why do we breathe? We breathe because there's a lot of alarming things going on in the world right now, and we can't have our body in this constant state of emergency and alarm. Some of us are trying to get over ailments and things and trying to really, thrive in life, even though there's some crazy circumstances going on that we've never encountered before. So let's take in a deep breath, in through the nose, out through the toes. Hold it. Let it go. Something we talked about and haven't really gotten into yet is the vagus nerve, and this nerve that goes all through your body, the wandering nerve. Apparently, taking these deep breaths helps that nerve to relax the rest of the body. So, who knew? In through the nose, out through the toes. Hold it. Let it go. I see Howard Aronin is here, 275 exclamation points. Yes, I want to shout out to Howard Aronin, who is doing 100 poems in 100 days out there on Instagram. More power to you. He was on the show earlier in the week doing some poems. Fantastic. Shelter from the current news situation. Yeah. Hey, Jay. All right, so we're going to take one more deep breath. I did want to mention Seth Word, our favorite clown, comedian, animal impersonator, was on America's Got Talent this week. You have to see him. He rises like a phoenix. For some reason, some people didn't appreciate it. They're wrong. So check that out, America's Got Talent, if you can. In through the nose, out through the toes. Hold it. What happens in vagus nerve stays in vagus nerve. Let it go. Okay, as they like to say in the show Lunch Therapy, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Interview Friday with Dave Vengus. All right, here we are with Dave Vengus. So good to see you. How are you doing?
Great. Doing really well.
Yeah?
I'm here in Atlanta, Georgia.
You're in Atlanta, Georgia?
I'm in hot Atlanta. Yeah.
Wow. I thought you were in New York. Oh, this is
I'm in
cool.
Atlanta, Georgia. Yeah.
Have you been living there? this whole
No,
time?
still live in Los Angeles, but you know how it is. Everyone's shooting in Atlanta now. So in features, if you want to work, you have to be willing to come to Atlanta a lot. And I've been here quite a bit over the past number of years. So almost every other year. This year is the first. This last year and this year will be the first time I've done back to back here. So.
Oh my God. So do you have a residence there, a permanent residence too?
I don't. I actually do have a second home. I bought a second home up in Lake Burton, which is northern Georgia. It's about
nice.
2 hours north of Atlanta. And it's a beautiful home. I have a lot of family out here. My dad, his wife, 4 of my siblings all live out here with their families. So I have a lot of family. So it's a second home pretty much. It has been for a while.
Wow. I just want to tell everybody how we met. It was a very strange circumstance. I think it was pre 9/11. I think it was that long ago.
Oh.
You used to be able to just kind of walk onto the set or walk onto the lot at Warner Brothers. And I just would go over there and I'd sometimes give my headshots to casting directors and things like that. So I walked onto the lot and I saw like a soundstage that I thought was where they shot The West Wing. And at the time I was really interested in The West Wing. So I went in there and there was like a little group of people shooting something there. I thought this looks like an independent film or something that's being shot in this huge soundstage. And there was a guy who walked by, I think he had a Hawaiian shirt on, and he looked like Steven Spielberg. And I was like, wow, that guy looks like Steven Spielberg. And then there was another guy that looked kind of like Jude Law. And I was just standing there in this small group of people. And you walked up to me and said, excuse me, who are you? And I'm like, my name's Joel. And you were like, I think that, let's go outside. So we went outside and you were like, I'm like, oh no, I'm in trouble. And you said, are you an actor? And I said, yeah, I'm an actor. And he's like, oh, okay. This is a very closed set because it's a very special production that's going on here. But if you give me your headshot and resume, and I was like, oh, I happen to have one here. And I gave you that. And you were super nice. And it was really, I was like, wow, that's the nicest guy ever. Because you could have just been like, get the hell out of here. So turns out it was the set of AI, artificial intelligence. And that was Steven Spielberg and Jude Law. And that was super, super fun. And so after that, I asked you if you'd interview on my podcast, which was years later, Fat Free Film. And we did this interview. I went over to your place. I think you were in Marina Del Rey or Playa del Rey.
Yeah, still there. Yeah. I've been there since 2000, actually, about when we met. Yeah.
So you have been working on these really high level films as a first AD for a number of years.
Yes.
Where are you from originally?
I'm from New York originally. I grew up in New York, grew up on Long Island, New York. Went to college upstate New York, and then started in the business, did all my production assistant days in New York before I moved out to LA. I've been in LA for about since 93, actually.
Wow. So you started on the Cosby Show, is that right?
That is right. Good memory. Yeah. I started the Cosby Show in 1987 and 88. Got out of college, needed a job. And back then there was no computers, no internet. There's no way of just emailing your resume off to people. And so you had to research how to type a letter up, type your resume up. I didn't have any money. I couldn't barely afford getting copies of anything. You had to go to Kinko's or whatever it was and mail your resume out. And I had done a bunch of internships throughout college. So I had a bit of a resume I could put out and had sent to everybody under the sun, and most out in Los Angeles. I was living in New York at the time. And one of the very few shows shooting at the time in New York was the Cosby Show. It was being shot in Queens, Kaufman Astoria Studios. And my sister was helping me out, and she said, you got to apply for the Cosby. I said, I'm not going to get on the Cosby Show. It's the #1 show in the world. There's no way I'm going to get on the Cosby Show. And I incorrectly believed because my race, because I was white, I would never get on. I was totally incorrect because it was very fair in the hiring and very evened out even back then. Mm-hmm. And long story short, I sent my resume out, and Cosby was one of I think I sent like 200 resumes out, and I think 4 people responded. I flew out to LA and actually did some interviews for a couple of shows at the time. I think it was like LA Law. It was, and there was a show called Rags to Riches at the time, NBC, a bunch of NBC stuff. And I got back to New York after interviewing, and I had one successful interview. It was going to be like a PA runner kind of thing. And the Cosby Show called and asked me if I wanted to go, and I interviewed for them and got the job. And so I ended up staying in New York and doing Cosby for 2 seasons.
Did you go to film school, or what did you do in college?
I went to a small state school. I couldn't afford at the time a proper like film school, NYU, UCLA was something like that. So I ended up going to a small state SUNY system college called Oneonta, which most people don't even know what the hell. Oneonta was popular at the time for having more bars per square mile than so it was like I was selling. I majored in drinking and minored in everything else. But and I really wanted to do something in film, and it had a film communications program, and most of the film classes were like Film 101 and film appreciation classes, and I think there was a couple of other, like Great Westerns or something. I can't remember exactly, but and there were very few film classes, and there was a television production class as well, and I think they had 2 levels of that. And anyway, long story short, I ended up shooting through all these classes within like 3 semesters. And I ended up going to a professor at the time, and it was, and I said, I want to keep going. I really like this, and I can't afford to go to film school, so I want to make the best out of this education. So I ended up creating with him an independent study version of the classes to kind of extend what he was already doing in film. And then another Dr. Zahore was my professor in television, and he had worked with me as well. And anyway, I was able to keep going and create these independent study classes. And I did graduate with I believe it was a communications major at the time with a film minor. So it wasn't a proper film school. And but what I did was I really wanted to get experience. So every summer, instead of working at Burger King, I ended up not putting that down, but instead of doing that, I did internships. So
it's a fine establishment.
Yeah, exactly. Probably Jack in the Box at the time, but it was. I ended up doing internships, and it was 4 hours from New York City. I lived on Long Island, which was spitting distance New York City, and I'm going down and just collecting a lot of information about internships, and was able to do a bunch of internships over the summers, and so was able to collect a resume, which actually helped me when I started interviewing for jobs, especially the Cosby Show.
Wow, I like the fact that you just made it happen where you were. You know what I mean? You got to use what you got where you are and just go with it. And then also just the idea of like, you had this moment where you were like, I don't know if I get on any big show like that. And then your sister was like, just do it. Because a lot of times we have those things that stop us. A lot of people that stops them. Yeah. So that's super cool. And you had like these ideas of like, oh, they're not going to like me because I'm white or whatever. And so that's cool that you totally got past that. At the time, did you have to choose a path, television or film? Or what was it like at the time? For actors, it was kind of like that at that time, where you had to choose one or the other.
It's really, it kind of is, and it is. And back then it was a little more blended because the film community in New York was pretty small for the most part. I mean, it was busy, don't get me wrong. Yeah. I knew I wanted to do movies. I figured television was probably an easier foothold because there was so much going on at the time, and I was correct. And ironically, I wanted to do film, and I didn't know how to do that. I'm like, okay, I'm on television, and Cosby was even... we had the time called 3-camera ISO, but it was basically in front of a live audience kind of a situation. It wasn't a single camera show. And as most films are considered. And in between the 2 seasons, I was shooting actually it was the first season. And it was a movie shooting right next door to us on the California storage stages. And I was doors open, and I walked in kind of like what you did, walked in the stage I shouldn't have been walking on, and suddenly tap on the shoulder. And as almost the same thing happened to me. I was like, why are you here? And I said, well, I work on the Cosby Show. Yeah. And this amazing second AD called Joe Ray, named Joe Ray, he said, oh, you work at the Cosby Show? I said, yeah. And so I played, he said, oh, could you give me tickets? And I was like, oh, well, it's really hard. And it really wasn't. I could just go over and get tickets. But I played it hard and said, well, if you get me a job as a PA in your next movie, I'll get you tickets. And so I got him tickets, he and his family, and he had a great time, went to the show and everything. And he remembered. And he said, when do you wrap this up? And I said, I wrapped at the time it was probably in May or something like that. Mm-hmm. And, or May, probably in May. Anyway, he called me, and he was doing a movie called Lean on Me. It was John Ellis directing. It was Morgan Freeman. Joe Clark. Yeah. It was being shot in Paterson, New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And I got the job, and he offered me a PA job, and I ended up working on my first movie in between. And so after that, and the movie wrapped exactly when Cosby started again. So I had a job, so I went back to the Cosby Show, and the whole year, second year I was on Cosby, all I could think about is I really want to do that. I want to do movies because that was so much fun.
Yeah.
And so I just decided not to go back for a third season of Cosby, and branched out. And at the time, was back and forth between single camera television. At the time, a lot of cop shows were being done. Equalizer was being done. Back in the day, there was a show called Help, which was Dick Wolf's first show before he did Law and Order.
Really?
A lot of us ended up doing beginning of Law and Order when that started. I'm totally dating myself now. And like other shows like Return to Kojak and Janek, there's all these old cop shows.
Yeah.
They were bringing back, it was called the Saturday Mystery Wheel. So we would all jump on that. All the PAs in New York would start getting those kind of jobs. And then I kept on going, I really want to do movies. And I was lucky enough to land a movie with an AD who did features back then. His name was Joe Reedy. And I became his key PA eventually and started just doing movies. And after that, I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do.
So you moved up the ranks as a PA first, and then you moved into, did you do second, and then first AD?
Exactly. Well, the thing with the film industry is, especially as assistant directors, most of the film, not all, but most film and television is under the Directors Guild of America. And it's union based. So
it seems like a lot of people have, or not a lot of people, but some people that I've talked to go through their program. There's like a DGA. Directors
that's
Guild
where
program.
I was going to go with this. There's three ways you can get into the Directors Guild. One is the way I did it was you worked as a production assistant. You had to work 600 days, not hours, but days as a PA. Save your call sheets and all nonsense and your pay stubs. Put your book in, you get in the guild. And at the time, you had to then accomplish a number of days outside of Southern California. At the time, I was in New York, so it didn't matter because you could work in East Coast or what's called third area, but you couldn't work Southern California until you worked 150 days outside of that, outside of Southern California as an AD, as assistant director. And I was lucky enough, as soon as I got in, the very first job I got was Natural Born Killers with Oliver Stone.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And then literally right after that, I wrapped Natural Born Killers and the next day flew to South Carolina and did Forrest Gump. And so I was able to finish my 150 days in 2 movies.
In 2 movies.
I was lucky as son of a gun.
I've heard you say that Natural Born Killers was the hardest movie that you ever worked on.
It was. So we'll talk about that in a moment. Back up for your question earlier. Yeah. The other way to do it is to get into the guild is to do the trainee program. That's the program you were referring to.
Yeah.
In New York and Los Angeles, they both have what's called the DGA AD trainee program. And they have a program that's very difficult, very competitive to get into, but you can apply. I think it's once a year. You can Google it if you are interested in on DGA.org. And anyway, you can apply to that. And if you get in the program, they place you on jobs to work with the AD staffs. And once you graduate the program, then you become an assistant director. Is the other way to get into the guild.
I've heard that that's a very difficult program to get into. They have some kind of test where you have to just basically you would probably be great at it though, but even back then.
I took it once. I took it once and I didn't even make it through the first round.
Really?
Oh God, it was awful.
I hear it's like got all kinds of questions. Like they give you a scenario and you're like, okay, what are you going to do? You're supposed to shoot a sunshine scene that takes place on the beach and all your extras died. And now you got to go find
about it. They don't even ask you anything about movies. They don't. Planning a family reunion and hear the problems.
Wow.
Oh God. So it's the funny thing is they rarely even talk about movies, to be quite frank with you, at first. And I'm sure as you get into the levels, then they get into more detail.
More specific. But I think, because they're kind of looking at you as sort of raw material at that time, I'm sure. So let's just see how this person can think. But you have one of those minds, though, that is extremely organized, probably, because it seems like it. You have first AD'd on things like Pirates of the Caribbean. And, like we were saying with Steven Spielberg, Minority Report, AI, all these things, you must have a very organized mind because the locations and all the things that are going on and all the possibilities of things that could go wrong, I don't see how you couldn't.
Well, you do. Yeah. I mean, my job is to organize the film and schedule the film. And also that goes to all different levels of organization. Right now, for instance, I'm in prep on a film for Disney. And part of my job is to organize daily meetings.
Is that Haunted Mansion? Can I ask you what it is?
I'm technically not allowed to talk.
Okay. I think
I'm doing it.
If I know.
It's a Disney ride.
It's some kind of thing. Yeah.
It's so
okay, so small world. You're working on it. It's a small world.
But
yeah. So you're working on a movie, some hypothetical movie for
anyway.
Disney.
So during prep, I have to organize everything from in the prep as well. So you have to keep everyone organized. And the thing about the industry is, when you're working on a film, you're working with so many different people from different walks of life, if you may, in the industry. So everyone, there's people on the creative side, there's people on the logistics side, there's people that they're laborers, and there's the talent, the actors, the casting directors. And so there's all these people, and my job is to constantly get them to do work together in the director's vision as best I can. And that goes from the prep through the shoot, obviously. And in prep, I get to organize meetings, scouts, make sure. And I always tell everyone everything's got to go through me, because it's my job to make sure this right.
It's a huge job that you do. You fun. Basically are the person that is in charge of making sure everything happens. Would you liken this to like a stage manager in the theater?
Yeah, it's very similar to stage managing in theater. I would liken it's almost exactly the same thing, to be quite frank with you. It's you have to get everyone together and organized. You have to organize rehearsals, and then on the night you have to organize the show, and make sure everything's going on.
So you start so early on, right? When the thing is just really just getting fleshed out. They hire you, and then you come in and you start to just. So you have to do. Do you have to do budgeting as well?
I'm not really in budgeting. I contribute towards budgeting by doing breakdowns. So the line producer and the production managers, they deal with the budgeting of the film. I will contribute by putting a one-line schedule out, which obviously goes towards budgeting. And also I'll do breakdowns. For instance, the needs per grouping. For instance, the cast data days, extras breakdowns, vehicle breakdown, I can go on and on. So every department relies on me to hand them the breakdowns, and they'll do their own breakdowns, but also a schedule, for instance, how much they'll need certain things. And that will help each department be able to put and deliver their budgets. So my work goes towards budgeting, but I'm not really part of the budgeting process.
How do you even know about all this stuff? So you've worked on films that are as varied as you worked on Marvin's Room, which was a real actor-driven film, which I do want to get back to that. I don't know how we're going to get to all this stuff, but you worked on that, and then you work on like Pirates of the Caribbean, and you work on Jungle Book, and where there's all this technical, basically, brand new technology, sometimes that has never been done before. Jungle Book has to be a movie where they did things that have never been done before, right? Because they had a live action boy. And then they had all digital.
That was insane. I mean, it was similar.
How can you predict that? How can you predict how can you predict how that's going to go if it's never been done before?
It's hard. You don't get me wrong. When you're creating a technology and you're working in a new technology and you're working along, you definitely stumble along the way, and it does throw you off at times, and you do have to kind of recover. But you have to learn quickly. The funny thing with Favreau was I was lucky enough. Favreau actually hired me to do Jungle Book because I had already had experience with Pirates of the Caribbean with motion capture with the Davy Jones and those guys. And then I worked with Robert Zemeckis when he had Image Movers Digital, when he was doing motion capture films like Christmas Carol and Mars Needs Moms. And so I had experience in that area. So when Jungle Book was getting done, Favreau was interested in hiring an AD to come in and help teach him, because he had never done anything like that, his work in motion capture towards creating a film. And the second level complexity of that film was then we were taking the animated part of the film and injecting in as an element a live action boy into the performance and putting his, so he wasn't motion capture. He was not. And so what we had to do is we had to use motion capture to literally create the entire film. We did a rough animation. We laid our shots down with what's called virtual camera. And then you edited it all together. And then you had to then deliver those shots that the boy was in to what's called tech viz for visual effects. And they would then say, okay, this is how you need to go back and reshoot every single shot on a blue screen stage with sets, with costumes, with makeup, with the boy being photographed with 3D cameras, with a camera called Simulcam system, and reshoot. And so it's an element shoot, we call it. So we were shooting the boy as an element to be able to inject into the animated film that we were going to create.
So is that like a 3D storyboard that you're making? And then
pretty much. Yeah, it's called Previs. So we create a previs, and so in essence, it's like a previs, yes. But we can actually lay shots down, and so you're creating that, and then the visual effects department will then up-res everything at the end of the movie to create the live action elements to the animals and the environments, and then the boy, of course, is live action.
So fascinating.
That was the first level, and then the second thing I did with Favreau was The Lion King, which took it to a whole nother level because there was no live action element to that, but he wanted a live action feel to the film. And we actually shot that movie 100% in virtual reality. We actually shot in goggles. So that film was 100% shot in VR. And
everybody was wearing the goggles?
Not the whole time, but to set shots, to create each shot, to scout, to do the stuff you typically would do to design the film. We would use virtual reality.
How do you keep up on this stuff? Is it just on the job learning?
Some, yeah. I mean, you're talking to a guy who never, I swear to God, I've never owned a video game machine. I don't even know anything about them. I wouldn't even know how to turn one on. Yeah. I swear I've never been that guy, but I knew, listen, I'm on the older side of most ADs right now. There's a lot of younger guys coming up behind me, and girls for that matter, coming up from behind me. And I get that. And I knew that if I wanted to stay relevant in this industry, that I had to make sure I understood where the industry was going. And virtual production is a big part of the industry right now. You can look at what's going on with Mandalorian and Star Wars.
Oh my God. And that's Favreau as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. So like they're even using gaming engines to do backgrounds, virtual backgrounds.
That's what we use. We use Unreal, for instance. We use Unreal a lot.
Unreal Engine,
There's many different versions of it, but Unreal's probably the most popular. And understanding that, I didn't know the first thing about Unreal, but I have an educated on that. I was doing a movie called Mouse Guard. It didn't unfortunately happen. It got shut down before we could actually shoot the thing. It was going to be a motion capture driven animated film. And we were shooting that using Unreal. And also because we were using Weta as one of our visual effects houses, they have another game engine. The engine they use is called Gazebo. So we were using the two for that. But yes, the answer is
so fascinating, so incredible. Do you see yourself directing again?
I'd like to.
Now that you have all this knowledge about all kinds of so many things.
You've
directed before.
I have to take time. I have to take the time and actually do it. I'm looking at a project right now. Actually, I'd love to do. I've been talking to some producers about. So their answer is yes. I do want to do that. I've been cursed with with the fact that I get offered some amazing jobs as an assistant director, and I tend to be the guy go, okay, I'll do one more, and then I don't put myself into the position to direct, and I need to start doing that and spending more time with that. And especially this kind of, I do love virtual production though. It's a ton of fun.
Are you concerned that maybe if you don't take a job, then maybe you're not going to get jobs in the future? I mean, this is totally not a true thing, but I wonder if you have the thought in your head.
Sometimes you do.
Take the time.
I mean, sometimes out of sight, out of mind. It's a business that is populated with a lot of very talented assistant directors and people that want to do what I do. And so sometimes you worry about that, but it's less about that, and it's actually the person that might be calling. Every time I'm like, I'm gonna take a break, and then John Watts calls me for Spider-Man, and I'm like,
suck you back in.
I'll do that one. Spider-Man. All right. And then I'll take a break. Oh well, they want you to do.
You want to do it. You want to do it.
So I don't want to pass up on some of the directors that I get, and all the directors I get, I'm very, very lucky. Have been amazing. Jean-Luc Serra, who did The Jungle Cruise, which just opened up actually this weekend.
Right.
He is an insanely talented director.
Yeah, what is he like? Because he's kind of a young guy who's been doing these incredible movies, and takes on something that huge. What's he like?
Jean is one of the nicest people I've met in the industry, let alone directors. Really? He is so organized, very, very quiet man, very, very quiet man. So at one point, someone said to him, there was an argument going on. Someone said, "Stop yelling at me." And John looked at him, he's like, I don't think I've ever raised my voice over the level I always talk. He doesn't believe in yelling and screaming. He's just the calmest person. He privately, he's probably, oh God, but he doesn't show it. He's so organized. He's so creative. He's so good with the actors. And obviously DJ, Dwayne Johnson, loves working with him because he ended up hiring him to do Black Adam as well, which they just finished. I did not do that when I was doing, because I was already on Spider-Man, so I couldn't do it. But Jean is one of the most talented directors I've worked with in a really long time.
Now, Emily Blunt was in that, and then she was in Quiet Place too.
That's correct.
Is that just a coincidence?
That's why I got A Quiet Place too. I was doing Jungle Cruise with her,
Yeah.
and I met John Krasinski, her husband,
Oh,
on
okay.
that. And I became friends with Emily on Jungle Cruise. And so when they were doing A Quiet Place too, John Krasinski offered me that to do work with him and Emily again. And I was lucky enough to do that. And again, what an extraordinary experience.
Yeah, I just saw that recently. I mean, was that John Krasinski? Was that the first movie he's directed, or has he directed?
No, he did A Quiet Place.
He did A Quiet Place too. A Quiet Place as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. And what was different about that movie?
Well, that was what I love about John is John is so into. Well, I don't know if you've seen A Quiet Place, but if you look at AQuiet Place,
I didn't see the first one. I just saw the second one.
I
don't even know. I can't even imagine what the first one was like after seeing the second one. I'm like, oh my God.
I'm sad to say you said that, because the second one literally is a direct continuation from the first movie. So
it is. Okay.
You should.
That scene in the beginning where the thing comes out of the sky, was that in the first movie too?
It was not. It was not. That was, but I don't want to ruin it for you. You should really see.
I'm going to go back and watch it. I just watched A Quiet Place too because you worked on it.
Oh, I appreciate it.
I watched it last night because I wanted to see.
I wish you told me. I would have said, please. My dad was going to watch this. I said, I'd watch the first one because it is literally, it's almost as if you press pause. And press play again, and when Sue just takes off, literally.
Really, but they seem so calm at the beginning of the movie. There's, I don't know anything about the first one, so but they're just at a baseball game. They're like, "Hey, everything's cool." Oh, look at that crazy thing coming out of the sky. Anyway,
they created basically a introduction prequel. So the first movie takes place in the same day as the most of the movie. Part 2 takes place.
That's probably why I was confused when it jumped 400 days or whatever, or how many days it jumped. And then I'm like, what happened to Krasinski? I shouldn't say anything. Probably blowing the first one.
I'm not going to say anything.
Okay.
But I will tell you that he did direct it, and he likes doing everything as practical as possible. He likes characters. He's so good with the actors because he is an actor himself.
It was a beautiful movie too, beautifully shot. And Millie that space Noah. That they were in with the where they got in a little quiet, whatever it was, a furnace or something like that.
Yeah, the furnace down in the basement. Yeah,
that was a beautiful set. Was it a set? I mean, was it built?
Well, the upstairs portion we actually shot in a real old rundown steel mill in Buffalo, New York. Wow. And all the stuff as soon as they drove down into the big pipe or whatever, call it, this thing that's sitting in the middle of the room. Yeah. It slid down. Everything downstairs was a set we built, including the furnace.
The set was just unbelievable. Yeah, it was good. And I don't know who the cinematographer was on that, but it was
Polly Morgan. She did an insanely good job. Polly is one of the most talented DPs I've worked with in a long time.
Yeah, just all that low light, and it's so dark, but it still looks so rich with color, and really something else.
An amazing job.
I want to go back to Marvin's Room because I want you to tell the story about Meryl Streep meeting Bob. I'm just jumping to that because I think it's such a great story. So
you got to forgive me. I'm trying to remember which one. There's so many.
Okay, so basically, I don't know. You come up with it, but you're working with Meryl Streep. So Meryl Streep, you're working with Meryl Streep.
Yeah.
And you're like, she's the greatest person ever, and she's obviously one of the greatest living actors. And you were talking about how she had to be helicoptered to the set. And so next door, Sesame Street was filming.
I'm sorry, Bob. I thought you meant Bob De Niro. Now I understand. No, I'm sorry. I thought you meant because Robert De Niro's in the movie.
So many Bobs on that set.
I now know. Thank God you put the context. Yeah. No, it's a great story. Thank you for bringing it. I'm sitting there going, why Robert De Niro? No, it was, we were shooting. That's a great story. First of all, Meryl Streep was like a bucket list actor to work with at the time. Yeah. This is a long time. This is back in 1995 when we shot. Yeah. This was a long time ago. It was Diane Keaton, Meryl Streep, Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, Hume Cronin, Gwen Verdon, an insanely great cast, insanely great movie. And anyway, Meryl, she was raising young kids at the time, and she didn't want, we had to shoot in New York. We shot actually at the Kaufman stages as well, same as when I did Cosby. And she would be helicoptered from her home so she can come work with us and be able to get back home to be with her family and her kids at nighttime. Yeah. And I was the second AD. It was not the first AD, by the way. But Ellen, so we had to coordinate that. And Ellen Schwartz, the first AD at the time, she and I had to coordinate, making sure, Meryl's hours and everything accommodated that. Anyway, next door to us was Sesame Street was being shot. And a bunch of us went sneaking in one day. We do a lot of sneaking, you and I.
You and I, man, we like to sneak on the sets.
And someone said we could go in and say they weren't shooting at the time, and we were walking around Sesame Street, and I don't care how old you are, you're just amazed by walking around Sesame Street.
Oh my God, yeah.
And out walks the actor, gentleman Bob, who was the I guess the store owner.
I think he worked at Mr. Looper's or something.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, he was one of the main guys.
I think at one point when Mr. Hooper died, I think Bob took over or something.
Maybe.
Anyway, so Bob came out and he said, "What's going on?" And he introduced himself, and we were like, "Oh, we're shooting next door," and with Meryl Streep, and he got all excited. He's like, "Is Meryl Streep next door?" And he said, "What do you think we can meet him?" And I meet her, and I said, "We could ask." So we went next door and went right to Meryl and said, we were next door to Sesame Street. And she goes, "You were on Sesame Street?" I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, "You're allowed to go on Sesame Street?" And she got just as excited. And we said, "Well, Bob wants to meet you." She goes, "Bob wants to meet me?" She was just as excited. And she said, "Well, hold on. You can't do it yet. Hold on." And she got a nanny or something to actually bring the kids. So they sent the helicopter.
They sent the helicopter and got the kids?
So they're going to bring the kids so the kids can.
I can't meet Bob without the kids.
Exactly. So in walks Bob, and he's all excited to meet Meryl, and she was equally as excited to meet Bob. And it was the most extraordinary thing to watch these two celebrities at completely different levels of their fame. Right. But we're totally enthralled with one another. I mean, he was like, "Oh my God, fun." And she's like, "Oh my God, it's Bob. We grew up with you. Oh my God, I grew up with you. Now my kids are growing up with you." And it was just the best thing ever to see her. And that's why I love her so much, because that's who she is. She's an extraordinary actor, but she's also just an extraordinary person and she's a mom, and I just loved that. It was one of my favorite things about her.
Yeah, that's so great. How is that different working on a set like that, where it's really just a bunch of small scenes with great actors? Is there a rehearsal process, or how is it different? Yeah.
Well, I think it's not really different. The difference there, we didn't have all the visual effects. We didn't have all the special effects. It wasn't as much.
So the focus is on the acting.
Yeah, but Marvin's Room was actually a play. And Jerry Zaks was the director, and he had actually come from theater. And I believe he actually directed that play, I believe. Yeah. And it was so amazing to bring this to life on film, because it was like watching a play, to watch these actors act together. And it was all acting. The whole film was just performances.
Yeah.
Performance. And it
was De Niro and Diane Keaton and DiCaprio and Streep. Oh my God. Yeah. Sorry.
It was incredible.
Yeah. It's incredible. Oh, well, okay. So you've worked with a lot of great directors. I want to talk about Oliver Stone, because you said that you were on National Born Killers and it was the hardest movie you ever did. Yeah. Why? Apparently you filmed in a live prison. Is that right?
We did. Well, the first film I did with Oliver, just back for a moment, so to get the introduction, I did. I was PA, and it was actually the first film I met Joe Reedy, the AD I referred to earlier.
Yeah.
I did a movie called JFK with Kevin Costner, and
what an incredible movie. Yeah.
And it was really an amazing.
And also it had all these people in it, like just tons of great scenes.
John Candy, Walter Matthau.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just
Kevin Bacon.
Oh, insanely.
Yeah.
Tommy Lee Jones, and would go on and on. That was an incredible cast. Joe Pesci. Yeah. Anyway, so we had done that, and then I'd gotten to know Oliver, and he had actually put my name in to be the second with the first AD. This guy named Herb Gaines, who's a terrific producer now, actually. But we did the film, and it was a road movie at first. It was all over the Southwest. We shot all over New Mexico and Arizona. I can't remember exactly where we shot, but we were just kind of this road movie. And then we ended in Chicago, and we ended at the prison. We shot at a prison called Stateville Prison, which was, and it was just the most violent freaking place in the world.
Why would he shoot in an actual prison?
Because Oliver wanted the reality. Not only did we shoot in the prison, we shot with real prisoners. And every single person in this prison.
Oh, they were in the movie?
Lifers. They were lifers.
Was this the scene when Robert De Niro's Robert Downey Jr. is like a Australian reporter?
Yes. And so Woody Harrelson, Juliette Lewis, Tom Sizemore, Robert Downey Jr. Yeah. It was, and Tommy Lee Jones again. It was just, it was nuts.
That was mayhem. I mean, in the movie, it was just mayhem. I guess it was like that on the set too.
It was crazy, and this prison was just nuts, and it was scary. I won't lie to you. It was exciting at the same time, because you're like, we did this, I was the second, so I had to deal with the background, and my background were prisoners, and I would go to this room and have guards with me, and they couldn't come to the table, and we'd organize them and check them in and everything, and then bring them to set. We had the guards up to bring in the set, and most were actually really kind of.
I'm sure they were
nice because they're bored and there's something.
Yeah,
to do,
they were so excited just to be involved in something.
And one day, this one big guy comes up, neck the size of my head, and walks up and he says, he goes, Ochoa wants to talk to you. And I said, what who wants to do what? He said, one of the prisoners was like, oh, that's like the main guy, I guess, the main prisoner. And this guy, shorter guy, comes, but all muscle, and comes up and he's like, oh man, I'm Ochoa. And I said, nice to meet you. And he said, I'm an actor. He goes, I just want you to know, when I get out of here, I'm going to be a big actor. He goes, so if you need an actor, talk to me. And I'm like, oh, I'll do what I can.
Yeah.
And I didn't think of anything about it. He said, you hook me up, man. I'll watch you back. I'll watch you back. I'm like, okay. So later on in the day, there was a scene and they needed one of the prisoners to interact with Tommy Lee Jones. And they had to get permission from the warden and the guards and everything. And I said, well, I got this great guy. He said, I think he's actually really good. So I told Oliver, I said, and the first AD, I said, can I bring this guy and show you? So I said, Ochoa, come here. So Ochoa goes over and Oliver loved him and gives him the role, and he starts talking to him and just loved him and didn't even know the situation that he was actually like the head prisoner, whatever you want to call it. And when it was done, the guy, Oliver's trying to talk to him at one point. He points to me. He goes, no, I'm only talking to him. I'm only talking to my friend Dave. I want to talk. And I'm like, no, don't do that. I'm a second AD. That's the director. And Oliver just got a kick out of it. He thought it was the funniest thing in the world that the head prisoner.
You're taking over the set.
It was crazy. It was nuts. But it was hard. It was very hard. And I'm not going to lie to you. The film was extraordinary. The film was great. I don't know if you like it or you either liked it or you hated that movie, but it was.
I liked it because I think I was looking at it, excuse me, the right way. I mean, the way Oliver Stone wanted me to look at it was to look at it as absurdism, violence taken to the extreme, so we can look at it and go, wait a minute, where are we going here?
Yes, and that's exactly it. He said at one point, I wanted to put a mirror up to society and say, this is what you've asked for. You crave this.
And we create the world through our visions of the world. And the point was, film is very powerful for that.
It is. But it was unbelievably disturbing to make. It was, you're killing someone every day, and it really wore on everybody. It was
and I think a lot of people who saw the movie maybe didn't look at it that way. They actually fell right into that same enjoying violence. Gratuitous violence. Yeah. So that's the thing about, well, excuse me, would you say Oliver Stone is a little like Francis Ford Coppola and Apocalypse Now when he filmed, it's like, so how do you as an AD kind of keep that under control? I know you were second, which is you handled basically the background people, right?
Right.
But if you were like first AD on something like that, do you just have to be constantly like you're playing basketball and you're guarding, know what I mean?
You really do, because listen, it was back then, it was a different group of personalities. I'm not going to speak ill of anyone, but there were some definitely complexities going on with some of our actors. Issues going on.
Complexities with the actors. That's a good way to put it.
And that one was a challenge. a challenge. And ironically, I worked with a couple of them, since that movie, and they look back going, oh, I don't know how any of us survived that movie sometimes. But it was rewarding to say you did it, but I won't lie to you. At the end of that movie, I think everyone was just like done, and I just wanted to go home. You
went straight to Forrest Gump after that?
I got a call asking, you want to come do this movie? I'm like, I don't know, I'm really tired. And there was gonna be another like 9 months of my life.
That's a huge movie too.
It was gigantic. And second seconds rarely get a lot of prep. And they wanted to give me a lot of prep because they needed someone to babysit the actors through like military boot camps and all this kind of stuff. So the second low man on the totem pole. And it was so busy. We actually brought another second on. Again, Eric Tigniti came on and two of us did it together because it was such a big movie and a lot to do. But
why did they call that a second and not a third AD?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Film jargon is so funny.
We're a second AD. It's not a second. We always call second, but it's actually a second AD.
So it's another one.
You're just the second AD.
So maybe they want to keep them on the same level or something.
All right. Instead of just saying you're the third AD.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. Who knows?
There's no such thing as a third second
No, after that, there are additional ADs.
There are additional ADs. Okay, how is it different to be a producer? Because now you've been a producer on several films.
Well, in all fairness, most of my producing credits are, I'm just going to say,
part of your contract.
They're gift and part of the contract and everything. And not that I don't earn it. I think I earn it through the work I do. Producing credits are interesting. Everyone asks, it's funny because people, how do I become a producer? I said, well, that's a loaded question because you have to answer the question of what kind of producer do you want to be?
Yeah, you could just be like, I don't know, you got a check you can write?
Well,
that could be how some people be producers, you know what I mean?
Well, the industry's like that. The fact is, if you're a studio film, the check is coming from a studio. So, the producers are typically, I'll use Jerry Bruckheimer as an example. If you're working on a Jerry Bruckheimer film, there's the producer that is hired or brought on to a project to get it set up, get directors attached, get talent attached. They're that producer. They're the top of the creative chain of producing. They're the ones that are putting the packaging, the thing together and making sure it's, and the old partnership, for instance, with Disney when Jerry did the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. And then you'll have producers that will be assigned from the studio, for instance, that will have a heavy hand on the creative side as well. And then they hire a line producer, and that person is the boots on the ground, dealing with the budget, getting the movie actually shot. Mm-hmm. So their job is to, and typically they take an executive producer credit. And so they're the ones that are the ones that are getting the actual movie shot and completed. And then there's other producing credits, and producers can come from, they had an association with the project in the past and contractually obligated to a credit of some kind. It could be a writer who gets a credit of some kind. It could be other person who might have been contractually obligated to a credit. And then there's associate producers who are typically also, for instance, if there was someone who might have been an assistant to a producer for years and are starting to move their way up, they might get an associate producer credit. And I'm not suggesting they don't do the work. They do this. We had an associate producer on the last film we did, and he was the director's producer, and he worked his butt off. He dealt with the script and everything. So they're all earned, but it's the type of producer. So, and an associate, a line producer, they're the guys and girls that get out there and they actually get the thing done. They do all the hiring. They're in cohesive bond with the director and people like me, the first ADs and stuff.
You work with a line producer a lot, I would guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's some things probably overlap a little bit, right?
100%. Yeah.
Do you ever do scouting and that kind of thing before the?
I do. Yeah.
Really? You go out and do the scouts too? That must be really wild, like on something like Pirates of the Caribbean, where you're all over the map, literally.
Yeah. You'll get on planes and you'll fly to wherever you go and everything. And
is that fun? Or is it stressful? Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I don't, it's funny because we do it so many times. By the time we actually do what's called the tech scout. Yeah. Which is where we bring the whole crew. We actually go over, this is what we're shooting here. And it's usually the scout you do before you shoot. Yeah. That by the time I get to that, I'm like, I'm so done with scouting. But an original scouting, we're actually finding the locations and getting directors' approvals and stuff like that. There are some times that a lot of that's done before I'm there. For instance, if they need to figure out a place to shoot prior, the production designer sometimes will have their time with a director prior to even me being on board. But this one, for instance, I went on all the scouting with the director and the production designer and line producers, and to choose the locations where we're shooting.
Oh my God, that's so cool. Okay, so tell me I know I'm jumping around a lot, but can you tell me about Steven Spielberg, what it was like to work with him?
Well, he was a bucket list. I'm not going to lie to you. I always treated my career with that. I had goals. We all have goals in our career.
Oh, that's something that's interesting. You had goals, like you're like, I want to work with this person. I want to work with this person.
And I had goals my whole career. And I always create these mini goals for myself. When I became a PA, my first thing was I got my first PA job. I said, my next PA, I want to do a movie. And I did that. Next one was I want to work for this certain AD. And I did that, et cetera, et cetera. And when I got in the guild, and I moved to Los Angeles, I said, my next goal is I'm going to work for Steven Spielberg. And I was determined, and who wouldn't want to? And I swear I was working on a movie called Pay It Forward with Haley Joel Osment and Kevin Spacey and Helen Hunt. Haley Joel Osment was probably 12 years old, I guess, at the time. And I had done Forrest Gump with him as well. He played.
Oh, he was in that too.
He played Forrest's son at the end of the movie, Jenny and Forrest's son at the end of the movie. He was 4 years old at the time. And suddenly we went to a movie with him. And I love working with kids. When I work with kids, I tend to bond with them. And I'm actually the guy that helps make sure they're comfortable and happy on the set and the whole thing. And Haley and I just got along really well. And I got along with his dad, Eugene. Anyway, so by the end of the movie, he kept on saying, because I want you to do all my movies. I want you to be my AD. It's a 12-year-old.
A 12-year-old. He knew what he wanted.
Suddenly he gets a call and he says, I'm going to meet with Steven Spielberg. I'm going to be in this movie. And he couldn't talk about the movie. He said, but I'm going to tell him you're my AD. I'm like, well, I don't know if that works that well, but okay. And I was a second AD, by the way, at the time. Wasn't the first one. And he goes and has this meeting with Steven. And at the end of the meeting says to Steven, if you don't have an AD, the second AD, I have this guy I'm working with. He's kind of like my AD. And Steven knew that the first AD had not hired a second, marched down to the first AD. He's like, you really should hire this guy because he already knows my lead actor. It was AI, was the movie. And so Sergio Mimica, who was the first AD, called me and said, I was told I should meet you, and I met with Sergio, and that's how I got my first job with Steven Spielberg. So Haley Joel Osment actually got me my.
Wow, that is so cool.
Yeah.
That is so cool. That's such a great story. He's doing some great work too. Like Kaminsky Method, he's so funny on, and he's been doing some really good stuff.
He's so talented.
Silicon Valley, yeah.
What a nice guy he is. And I keep in touch with him via texting and stuff every once in a while. But Steven is extraordinary. Steven, I was able to do, I never first did for Steven. I was a second for him. But I had done AI, Minority Report, Catch Me If You Can in the Terminal with him. And all with Sergio Mimica, who was his first at the time. And Steven was, and still is, because just by reputation, the nicest but the most organized person you've ever met in your life. He is so clear on what he wants. He gives so much freedom to his crews and to his department heads, his DPs, his production designers, but there's never this ambiguity of what is needed or what is wanted or what his vision is of the film. And he may not be there every single minute of the day in prep, but that there's a freedom he gives everyone and a clarity to everything he wants. And he's just one of these directors that, his chair back, at least back then, I don't know if it is now, would say dad. We need to say Steven Spielberg, dad. And he was just this genuinely nice human being to work with. And it was Steven Spielberg, so you didn't know what to expect. He could have been the meanest person on the planet.
He could be, because he could get away with that.
And
totally.
He didn't, and he never did. And he was, but I always said Steven was very funny because he is as famous as he was at the time. And again, this was back at the time when I was working with the early 2000s. He was also just enthralled with, he wanted to be part of whatever is new. Like I think Leonardo DiCaprio at one point got some new phone at the time. The iPhones and everything were coming up, and someone got whatever the new thing was, and Steven was like, pulls his sister, I need to have that, and it was like, and he just wanted to always be up on everything with everyone.
Yeah.
And
that's cool.
But he just genuinely, and he liked having fun on the set, and there was just a genuine love for the actors, and so good with the actors. To watch him work with these actors, there's a reason Tom Hanks and people like that all would continue to work with him, is because the relationship was so strong. I loved working for Steven Spielberg.
Wow, that's super interesting.
Yeah.
I want to ask you one other thing, because we're running out of time, but you have some music videos that you directed that I've seen online. What's going on with that?
It's honestly, it's not my foray at all. I love doing it because it was the group of people that I'm doing it with. It's a family I've known for years. The boys that are doing the Ochoa brothers, and I had worked with them on a movie called Christmas Carol with Zemeckis. I met them. They were motion capture actors. They all actually act as well. They're all actors. Ryan has been doing a lot of work lately.
They're fun videos. I watched them all.
Yeah,
really fun. So
they asked me when they started doing these videos a while back. They asked me if I would help them and put them together and direct them. And we just started directing them, and it was a fun, very, low budget, whatever we could afford at the time, but real creative. And what I love about the film, those music videos, they really were family driven, and the boys.
I get that feeling totally.
Yeah. And everyone that joined in wanted to be part of it and wanted to help out. And I liked doing it. I like helping people. Listen, I've had a really blessed and incredible career. So when I can help someone else do something that might, for especially younger people, they can actually further their career, and it might be in music. I managed a band for a while. I was.
You did?
I did. I stupidly. I mean, I love the band. Don't get me wrong, but it was like my closest I've ever come to wanting to kill myself. But it was music industry. Music industry.
It's tough.
Movie industry looks so much more fun. It's, it is an awful industry, and I say that with love of it. I love the music industry, but I hated it. It was
you hear so many horror stories about people signing contracts with music companies and trying to get out of them. Prince all the way down to whoever.
It was so much fun doing it. It was fun. I was setting them up, and we played the Vibe. Live shows I love doing that kind of stuff, and we were playing the Viper Room and the Mint and all these great places, the venues in LA. Los Angeles, and it was fun. I did it for about a minute, and friends of mine.
Well, you know Johnny Depp, so he could probably get you in the Viper Room at any time, right?
Exactly right. I love that. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. This has been so great. I really, it's just incredible, your career, and you're just such a kind person, and it really comes across, and that's probably why you're so good at what you do. And I hope that you are going to take the time to direct something soon, because I think that's all this knowledge that you've gained, up to this point. I think we need to put it into a movie, and I think I should be in it.
I look at you. We got the right hat. You could be one of the Three Musketeers.
Excellent. Yes, I totally will do that. I will be a pirate. I'll be whatever you need. Yeah. But anyway, so thanks so much for being on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And keep in touch. And I just, I really am grateful to you. I'm in the dojo and I'm
back at you.
Bowing.
Okay.
All right.
I love your space back there.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
All right.
We'll see you. Okay. There you go. There he is, Dave Vengus. Anybody that you know that might be starting out in the movie business, this is a really good interview for them. Send this to them, please, because it could save them decades of beating their head against the wall. He gave a pretty darn good path of how you can work in the movie industry, and also about jobs that maybe people don't know about that are super fun and super rewarding. Chuck says, ask me about class president. Okay, Chuck, I'm asking you about class president. Fabulous. Yeah, isn't he just the nicest guy? And a legend. Yeah, a legend in the filmmaking industry for sure. So thanks, Dave, for being on the show. I promised that I would play the Ochoa Boyz at the end for the dance break. This is the video, one of the videos that Dave did with them. So I hope you'll enjoy it. We're going to dance it out. Charles is still confused with what he's talking about. 9th grade, more to come. All right. Extra special interview. Yeah, it wasn't it? Thanks for being here. All right. It's great to see everybody here. All right. We're going to dance it out with the Ochoa Boyz. Here we go. Here we go. They are.
You feel that rush take hold. The beat transforms your soul. Intoxicated by the lights, I know I'm home. I'm breathing in the sound. Dance floor heats up, around I'm hooked. Addicted to this California party life. Hands up, sky reach, jumping, no sleep. You know where to find me. Turning up where the music's at. Rhythm controls you. The night's nearly over. Lost in this coma.
Where are my dance partners?
Now go for grab your chick, now hold up. I'm so fly. Let's dance till the morning light. Drop it and grind it. Pop it, don't hide it. Don't be shy. California party life. Party life. California party life. We do is act the crowd. California party life. Party life. California. Call us up, sing it loud. 1-800-421. Our local flash is in the air. It's time to make some noise.
Okay, thanks everybody for being here today. This is a real treat. I hope we all enjoyed ourselves. Maybe learned something. I don't know. I learned something about setting goals. Goals are good. Bucket lists. You might be too old for this. I'm not. This is great. This part.
You got 3 seconds.
Hands up, sky, reach up in no sleep. You know where to find me.
Thanks, Ochoa Boyz, for letting us play this video. Really appreciate it. It's gonna send me off on the rest of my day with a lot of energy. Alright, we'll see y'all on Tuesday for more fun. This has been Lunch Therapy, episode 200.